Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the cost of grad school as a therapist. So I specifically went to school for clinical mental health counseling, but I do think that social work and marriage and family therapy programs are probably somewhat comparable in terms of cost and in terms of the hidden fees and licensure hoops that you have to jump through. So if you are looking to become a therapist, I think this video will still apply whether you plan to be an LPC, an MFT, or a social worker. So if you're interested, keep on watching. I couldn't really find another video like this on the internet, so I wanted to make it because I think that there are so many people who want to get into the field and truly do not know what to expect. And that was 100% me when I was looking to go to grad school. So if you are interested in grad school things, financial stuff, debt, tuition costs, and all of that, then keep on watching. Hi, my name is Alyssa Powers, and I created this YouTube channel to teach you the things that grad school didn't so you can thrive as a mental health professional. If you want to see more of this kind of content tailored to therapists, please like and subscribe to my channel. Getting right into it, the major things that you are going to want to think about when thinking about the cost of grad school is, first and foremost, tuition. That will obviously be your biggest cost. And then things like textbooks, parking, and associations. So for me, my tuition ended up costing around $25,000 by the end of my program. I think it was about $5,000 a semester, and I finished my program in 2.5 years. So it's based off how many credits you're in, and when you're in your internship and your practicum, those are also worth a certain amount of credits. So you really are in like the full amount of grad credits the whole time. I think I was in 9 credits a semester, I want to say, and that was going like full steam ahead. It's not like your undergrad where if you like meet a certain amount of credits, it just like pays for itself. There's no cutoff there. And another thing to think about with grad school and tuition, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm based in Ohio in the United States, so this could be different in other places, but grants and things like the FAFSA aren't going to cover grad school because they view grad school as like an extra thing that you are pursuing. And so there were no grants available to me. There are things like scholarships and assistantships, of course, but keep in mind that if you were someone who qualified for a ton of financial aid for your undergraduate degree, you are probably not going to qualify for anything for grad school. But please correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my experience. So the thing about tuition is that there's a huge range, right? So I personally went to a local state school, and I would say I'm probably on the lower end in terms of cost, but Therapist Twitter in 2022 reported, they did a little poll on Twitter about how much grad school costs them, and 45% said 0 to 50K. So that's the range I would be in. And then 32% said 50 to 100K. And then there were a couple higher ranges that had like 9% in both of them that were probably like the minority. So obviously 0 to 50K is a huge range, right? Like 10K versus 50K is very, very different. But I would say that if you want to be on the low end of things, then looking at local schools is going to be way more affordable than going out of state or going to a school that just has really high tuition or is really competitive. But of course, everyone also has different financial, situations that they're in. So that's something to keep in mind. We really can't easily average it out, but from my research of just reading articles, reading other people's experiences on Reddit and so on, it seems like anywhere from 15K to 75K was the average. And I would say anything below 15 is kind of an outlier, and anything above 75 seemed to be kind of an outlier as well. So that's something about the average cost of just tuition. Now, I want you to think about some of the hidden costs of becoming a therapist, because there are quite a few. And I don't say this to deter you. I just think that it's good to know this in advance, because you probably didn't have to deal with this in your undergrad. Like, we all had to buy textbooks, right? So we kind of know that that's a hidden cost of going to school. But things like when you're an intern, for instance, you might be expected to pay for your own liability insurance, pay for your Psychology Today profile, pay for parking, pay for your NCE test prep materials. Now, for me, I did my internship at a private practice and I had to pay for all of that. Actually, I wouldn't expect them really to pay for my test materials, but just knowing like I had a monthly fee for my Psychology Today profile because that's how I was getting clients. Liability insurance isn't a huge cost. I think it was like a yearly cost of like $100, maybe a little over $100. And you do need that. So, I mean, it's a good thing to have, but my goodness, like you just don't think about that. And then you also just need to keep in mind that actually getting licensed, taking your NCE and taking your tests costs a couple $100. I think taking the test, I don't want to misspeak, but I want to say it was around $300 or $400. And then like the board processing all that, it charges a fee for that as well. Similar to, I also have a teaching license. It's probably expired now because I haven't used it, but it was similar to that process. So I had to sit for an exam, send the Board of Education all my stuff, then they charged me a fee. It's just a lot of fees that you don't think about. So putting that out there as well, that getting licensed costs a good bit of money. Now, I want to talk about some things to keep in mind, just little helpful tidbits that I wish someone had told me. So first things first is that most people cannot work full-time and do the clinical mental health grad program because it's insanely time intensive with having to get those practicum hours and internship hours. Being an intern is basically like working a full-time job. So, and I want to say it's around, maybe I shouldn't say that because I'm not sure how many hours you have to get as an intern, but it's a lot. I remember it being a lot of hours. So unless you are superhuman, I would say the most you can probably get away with while you're in grad school is working part-time. Now, what I did is, like I said, I have an education degree, so I worked part-time as a Title I tutor in a school, and I think I worked from like 7 to 12:30 every day, and I was making around $30 an hour. And it was honestly the perfect situation because then I could go home for a little bit, eat, pack my dinner for the night, and go to class. And if I had clients that night at practicum, then I did that. So I was able to pay for my grad school out of pocket as I went. I did have a family member who paid for my very first semester to kind of give me that like little head start into saving up for my following semesters, which I'm so thankful. That was my grandma who just passed away this past year. So really thankful to her for doing that for me. And I know not everyone has that kind of support, but I already had about $25,000 to $30,000 in debt from my undergrad, and I was really trying to pay that down, and I didn't want to take on any more. I didn't feel like it would be responsible of me, but everyone has different situations. So just keep in mind with the finances, I wouldn't think about like, oh, here's my full-time salary and also like that's how I'm going to pay for grad school, because I think it would be near impossible. I know for me, my classes were almost always in the evenings for grad school because they are catering to people that have jobs, but they started at 4:25 and then I'd be in class until like 7 at night. I mean, that's a really long day if you're working full time. And on top of it, if you have kids or you have a family or a spouse, like that's going to be very difficult. So I don't say this to scare you. I just say this to tell you so you can think about what kind of financial situation you're going to be in. A lot of people, like professors, will say like you shouldn't even work. You should treat school as your job. And that's like obviously such a privileged thing to say, because a lot of people need to work to survive. Like I was fully financially independent when I like from my parents when I did grad school, and I needed to work part-time. So, but with my part-time job, I had more than enough time to do homework and all of that. That's a video for another day, I suppose. So another thing to think about in terms of finances are that once you get to the internship part of your program, which for clinical mental health is the last 2 semesters of your schooling, most internships are unpaid. So that's something to keep in mind too, that you might be working like 30, 40 hours a week completely unpaid. Now, I could go on a whole rant about how I think that's so unethical and terrible, but you already know that. And I would highly recommend finding an internship that will pay you. When I worked as an intern, I got paid 50% of everything that I brought in. I did take on a lot of pro bono clients because that's just what they used interns for at the practice, which is understandable because you're just trying to get your hours and training. So it's not all about making money at that point, but I would try and find an internship that does pay you, because I think you deserve to be paid for your labor period. And then this is my last just helpful tip, is that assistantships can be so helpful in terms of covering the cost. So at the university I went to, if you had an assistantship, with which my specific program didn't have assistantships, but you could get an assistantship in other departments. So for instance, like I know some people were assistants in the school advising offices, so they would help with student advising, and then they had their tuition fully covered because they were employees of the school, and they got a stipend to live off of. So I mean, it's not like big time money or anything, but if I could go back, oh well, I had a pretty great situation, honestly, so I think I'd still do it the way I did it. But just know that assistantships are out there. You need to like contact people and network and apply and look out for those postings. And sometimes they're not posted. You need to just like contact the admin of the different departments. But I would recommend that. That is like hugely beneficial, and you're getting something that you can put on your resume too. And if it could be at all therapy related, or like working one-on-one with people, I almost feel like student advising is a great example of that. You know, working one-on-one with students is a great resume builder. So keep that in mind. And I think that's pretty much it. I covered everything that I wanted to. I really wanted to just help you guys navigate the world of becoming a therapist, because on top of all these things, like it being so expensive and grad school being just inaccessible and another thing that puts us into debt, then on top of it all, therapists are very underpaid. So don't get me wrong, I would do it again. Like I absolutely love my job. For me, private practice has made it amazing, and I absolutely love my business and how things have worked out for me. Oh no, my dogs are gonna wake my son up.